Hello and welcome to this 100th consecutive week of Cheaper Jeeper TV episodes, and to celebrate we have a special video for you today. We have a cross-country interview with 3 different Jeep adventurers. We have one from the East Coast, one from the central part of the country, and one from the West Coast. We'll listen to them talk about how they've equipped their rigs. We'll listen to how they have adventures in their part of the country, and then we'll listen to some tips and future plans that they'd like to share. So stick around. Hey, thank you for joining us here on this 100th consecutive weekly episode. I just want to thank all the subscribers and viewers who have liked and shared the videos. And if you're new to the channel, please feel free to subscribe so you don't miss exciting episodes. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my guests. Hello all, and welcome to the first ever Cheaper Jeeper TV cross-country Jeep Adventurers interview or Zoom meeting. Thank you all for your participation. I'm very excited to have you guys answer some questions and share your expertise with us. I just want our viewers to know that as they listen to your answers, if they find anything that you said really interesting, I'll have links to your YouTube pages and your websites in the description section so they could go and look you up and find out more information and be able to reach you there. So why don't we just get started with the introductions? We'll first look to the east, and I'll introduce everybody to Todd from the east coast of Canada, who has the YouTube channel called TrailWalker. It's quite an amazing YouTube channel where he's taking people out off-roading on different trails, and there's some beautiful scenery in his videos. And Todd, thank you very much for showing up for this meeting today.
No, thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on the 100th episode.
Thank you so much. And then from Central Canada, we've got Dieter, who he's a blogger, and he has a website called stdi.com. And on that homepage, there's an image of a Jeep with the word home on it. You click that and it takes you to all of his documentation of his extensive trips through Northern Ontario and beyond. So Dieter, thank you for joining us today and for being willing to share with us your expertise.
Thank you for having me, but it's not me that does the travel, it's my wife and me. Like, we're both retired. We have a lot of time and we love to travel. So it's always about Ursula and I. So.
That's excellent. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. And then last but certainly not least is Casey250 representing the West Coast. And Casey, thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share with us your adventures in that epic scenery on the West Coast.
Oh yeah, well, thanks for inviting me and putting this together.
Okay, awesome. You know, at this point, it's probably a good idea to make mention that we are aware from watching the news what's happening on the West Coast, and we see all the flooding and the mudslides happening out there, and we just hope that our friends on the West Coast get through this difficult period, and we just want them to know that our thoughts are with them. So I'd just like to explain to our audience the format of the meeting. I'm going to be asking each participant a question about the rig. Then I'm going to follow that up with a question to each participant about some of their adventures in their location. And then finally, I'm going to ask them all about any kind of final tips, words of advice, or future plans that they have. And then once we've gone through all that, we'll have an open forum session where we can just ask each other any kinds of questions after we've learned a little bit about each other. Without further ado, we'll start with Todd on the East Coast from the TrailWalker YouTube channel. Todd, let us know a little bit about your rig.
Well, it's nothing special. I mean, it's a 2017 Jeep Sahara, and when I got it, I knew I was going to be doing some upgrades to it right away. So the first was the weak spot of the Dana 30 axle in the front, so I swapped it out for a Dana 44 Extreme axle. I only went with a 2.5-inch lift at first with 35-inch tires, but after I started off-roading for a bit, I realized that the 2.5-inch lift just wasn't enough. So I bumped it up to a 4-inch lift, and with the larger axles, I will eventually be putting 37s on it. But right now, I'm still sticking with 35s. And again, just replace the factory bumpers, front and rear, with steel bumpers, which I know adds a little extra weight to it. But it's been really amazing for me for the type of wheeling we do here. The trails are very, very, very tight, so you're bumping into trees quite a bit. So having the steel bumper instead of aluminum, it can take the bang. Re-geared it, got 488s in the Jeep right now, which makes a big difference when you're doing anything off-road. Just getting rid of the factory 321s was an amazing thing. But I mean, it's got a little minor modifications. Lighting, I do a lot of nighttime runs where it's pitch dark in the woods, so I have a lot of LED lightings in the front and rear just to make sure you can light up the trail and see where you're going. But besides that, that's about all the mods I've done. It's the engine's factory, the transmission's factory, I mean, everything else is pretty well factory underneath.
Okay, that sounds pretty impressive. Did you do anything like lockers or anything like that?
Yeah, with the axles, when I swapped out the gears, I put E&E lockers in the front and rear just to give you that extra traction when you need it, and that was definitely a major upgrade for the vehicle.
Well, I see that picture in the snow behind you there, so I imagine they come in handy in circumstances like that.
Yeah, we've off-roaded quite a bit in the wintertime, and it's nothing to have 3 or 4 feet of snow down that we drive on. And the snow here is a little different, I think, than a lot of places. It gets to be really thick and hard. So when you air down to like 8 psi, you're able to work your Jeep up on top of the snow, and you can pretty well stay on top of the snow the entire time when you're off-roading around here.
Okay, so probably based on how you built your rig, it dictates the kind of adventures that you'll be alluding to in the next question then.
Yeah, most definitely. It's
okay.
Definitely customized for my environment.
Excellent. Okay, so now we'll move to the central part of the country where we have Dieter. And Dieter, why don't you let us know a little bit about your rig?
We have the Jeep Sahara Unlimited 2013, unmodified. There is nothing special on there. We did, however, change the brakes. So we have power stop brakes for pulling the trailer. We also added some airlift load assist in there into the spring on the back. So when we put the trailer on in the back, it doesn't sag that much. So typically I don't have to readjust my headlights. Beside that, it's a standard stock Jeep. What we do is travel. So I really don't need bigger tires. I don't need anything that would make the Jeep heavier or take more gasoline, because with the trailer on, we already brought it up over 20 liters per 100 kilometers through the prairies. It's a gas guzzler. And I mean, I'm talking a stock Jeep, which is usually like 14 liters around there, plus minus. So all the changes we did was towards travel. That means we put in the sleeping platform. We put on a Cargo Master Safari rack. So the heavy duty 2-inch tubes. It's pretty much a cage around the Jeep. Again, it's extremely heavy, but it can take up to 500 kilos, I believe. And we just throw the stuff on top of it. This year, we built a wind deflector, so we can actually save gasoline when we have these crazy headwinds through the prairies. I think it worked. We really dropped it down to around 18 liters maximum.
Okay, well, so in essence, it's a stock Jeep with a couple other extra little things that you've done to facilitate your traveling. So when we get to the next question, we'll have a look and see the kind of travels you could do with your stock Jeep. Excellent. So Casey, out on the West Coast from KC250, the YouTube channel, please let us know a little bit about your rig.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 Jeeps, so I won't get too deep into it because I could probably talk for an hour, but I've got my 2020 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, which is the diesel engine. So when we talk about fuel economy, it's really good. So that one's slowly evolving, but I've kind of been turning it into my overland rig. So long distance travel, multi-day trips. And it's I put a roof rack on it. It's the Adventure Rack system from Metal Cloak, and it's got a rooftop tent from Free Spirit. I've been kind of playing around with lifts. I kind of say it's got a 3.5-inch lift, but really it's a balance of the weight of the vehicle and the right spring, the brand, the firmness of the spring. So it's probably sitting about 3 inches over stock, and we've got 37-inch tires. A lot of the time, you don't really need 37-inch tires on your overland vehicle, but it's nice to have the clearance for the occasional thing that you come across that you want to get through and not worry about it. So I ran 37s on it right from the start. And just kind of been building it up, equipping it for, multi-day trips, shooting some of these longer videos, things like that. And then I've got my 2008 JK Rubicon that I haven't really shot much with it in the last year or so since getting the JL, but that one's got a lot of modifications on it, from the Pro Rock front axle that I put in it with a re-gear to 513s, It's got 37-inch tires on it as well with bead locks and just everything, metal fenders, metal bumpers, tire carriers. Pretty much it's my island off-roading vehicle. So here on Vancouver Island, like you were saying, Todd, we've got a lot of tight trees as well here. And I'm really hesitant to take the JL out in some of these tight trails, especially with it's about 8 feet tall almost now. And the JK is about 5'10". So it's quite a comparison between the two of them, but it works really well for tight trails and island wheeling. And since it's got the anemic 3.8 liter in it, I don't go on any long distance road trips with it either. But yeah, you know, those are my two rigs, and we get on a lot of awesome adventures with them.
Okay, that's excellent. Now, what was the biggest thing you noticed when you got the diesel?
The power.
Okay.
It's a very, very powerful engine. And, you know, I know the 392 is out as well, which is also very powerful. But the thing with the diesel is even putting larger tires on it, adding, you know, hundreds of pounds of gear, it still feels the same as it did when it was stock as far as torque and acceleration. And it can still hold 8th gear going down the highway with 37s with its stock 373 gears. And, you know, it's got a lot of power. It's a really good, I'd say, road trip engine platform. It just cruises along on the highway, and I still get probably 10 to maybe 11 liters per 100K with all of the equipment on it. So
Wow.
It saves me a lot of money in fuel as well.
So that's definitely impacted your types of adventures then.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Okay, well, why don't we take it to the next question now? Todd, with your rig and your location, can you share with us some of the adventures that people can learn about and understand are available on the East Coast?
Well, the nicest adventure is the one that's behind me right now. It's called Meat Cove, and well, I would call this one Lowlands Cove. It's a trail we discovered last year, and it has not been traveled by many. And it's about 4 hours total from Sydney, and we were looking for new trails all the time. And when we discovered this place, it was like walking into a movie set. And basically, as you're coming in the trail, it's again these tight wood trails where you got to be kind of very careful and maneuver around rocks and that stuff. And then all of a sudden, it just opens up to this absolutely beautiful scenery and beautiful view. I can't even it's just so difficult to describe the view. It's just something out of a movie set. It's absolutely amazing. And that's one thing I love about the Jeeps and having adventures that we have like this is you're able to find these places that people just don't know of. You can probably less than 1% of people on Cape Breton Island have ever seen this location.
Excellent. Now that type of adventure that you just described there, that with a stock Jeep, you probably could get in, but it would be a bit of work.
It would be. There's a couple of areas that are of concern that if you did have a stock vehicle that you would probably get hung up. And so, I mean, even if you had a stock vehicle, I'd recommend never going in there by yourself. And if you did go in there by yourself, at least have a winch or some type of recovery ability to recover yourself, because there's 2 places that you could possibly get stuck. We did a place called Cape Clear, and again, it's just an absolutely amazing view. It's you're basically on top of the mountains, and when you look around, you can see 5, 6, maybe 7 mountains in the distance, and it's just it's an absolutely beautiful scenery. And Cape Breton does have a lot of places that are hidden like that are not in the tourist books, and this is what I look for. And I love taking people to these locations so that they can experience the stuff that not everyone gets to see.
Now, I know from watching the TrailWalker channel, your channel on YouTube, you do a great number of trails, and a lot of them are just amazing. You do them in the summer, you do them in the winter. So people who want to see those kinds of adventures on Cape Breton can observe them on your channel. And when you mentioned Cape Clear, I understand that was you can get to with a stock Jeep very easily.
Yeah, so the great thing about the Cape Clear is that there are logging roads that allow you to get to that area using those types of roads. Now, I always take a different approach because I just like the challenge, and plus there's other stops on the way that I get to show people. But some places like that, they do have easy access for stock vehicles, and I recommend anyone coming to Cape Breton, go to Cape Clear. It's something that you'll never forget.
Okay, so for people who didn't know about the kind of Jeep adventures at Cape Breton, they could check your channel out and learn a little more there.
And
now we'll move on to Dieter. Dieter, I know you have quite extensive travels in Northern Ontario and beyond. Why don't you share with us some of your adventures?
Yeah, we did east and west, obviously. We drove out to BC 4 times with the Jeep, 3 times of them with the trailer on there. And before that, we drove out to Whistler 6 times with the Dodge Dakota and another car, which I forgot. We went to the Maritimes with the trailer. Obviously, we drove around with the trailer in Ontario, all over the place. So the first thing I want to say, when we did the British Columbia with the trailer, we did about 15,000 kilometers. 9,000 of this was with the trailer in the back. We only use premium gasoline because no pinging, no engine dirt, so we never have to do the engine cleaning and all that, so we save money there. And so far we never had an issue. It just runs smooth like it should.
It's a stock Jeep, so you're showing, for example, that even people with stock Jeeps can go and have adventures. People who want to have a trailer can have adventures. Now, Dieter, you have a lot of travels in Northern Ontario. Can you tell us about some of those adventures?
Northern Ontario, there is Highway 17, which goes along Lake Superior over to Manitoba. And there is a Highway 11, which is sort of a little bit further north. And it is pretty much the only road that gets you west. So north of Highway 11, there is nothing. So every Forest Service road you see goes into, I wouldn't say nowhere. I mean, the places up there are just absolutely breathtaking. They go to lakes, you can go fishing, you can go in some places climbing, or what we liked to do last year was explore abandoned mines. So we actually did a lot of research before we left. So once we knew about all these, I believe it's around close to 10,000 abandoned mines in Ontario. So now you can, oh, I'm here. How many mines are in the neighborhood? Can we find them? But it's these things we're sort of after. Or you're in the wilderness somewhere, there is a pond or something, there is a moose feeding on the aquatic vegetation there. And you just sit there and enjoy the view. It's quiet, it's just absolutely amazing.
Well, so for the viewers who are interested in seeing the kinds of adventures you could do with a stock Jeep, if they go to your website, they'll notice a lot of documentation of your experience on Crown land and these back roads. So I'll just direct them to that. So thank you, Dieter, for that. And then Casey, could you tell us about some of your adventures on the West Coast?
Yeah, well, there's been a few of them, that's for sure. But you know, we have a lot of similar challenges out here. You know, everywhere we're going, we're exploring Forest Service roads or mining exploration roads, and you know, it's not uncommon to come across very overgrown ones. I think a couple videos ago, we were up trying to find the top of this mountain, and the alder trees were just so grown in over the sides of the Jeep. You know, they're trying to rip your mirrors off, and it's just pretty crazy. But you know, everywhere out here is just amazing. And you know, the thing with BC is it's just there's so many well, they're not, I wouldn't say undocumented, but just not a lot of information about them. And Sean and I have just been spending, you know, the last year and a half going down so many exploration roads, and you know, we'll basically just get on Google Maps and look for something that looks cool, and see if we can find a route there. And you know, sometimes we'll make it, sometimes we'll come across a huge washout, sometimes it's so overgrown that you can't keep going, but you know, on some occasions we find just absolutely epic locations. And you know, that's where getting the drone out and exploring around is really awesome, because you know, you can only see so much when you actually stop and you put a drone up in the air, and there's just even more breathtaking stuff around. But out here, it's everything. You know, we've explored you know, old abandoned mines. I'm not a big fan of going in them, but some of the guys from Epic like to go in them. But you know, just trying to get to some mountain peaks. We've got a very limited window of opportunity a lot of the time for getting to some of these locations. There's so much altitude and elevation change. As soon as the colder weather comes, we just get so much snow once we start getting out of the lower mainland that you just can't get through anything. It's not like going through flat snow. It's going up elevation, and going up elevation in snow is super challenging. And you know, we get a lot of comments about, you know, why don't you use chains and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't work. And so, you know, around May we start trying to see what we can get into. But you know, this year, like July, August, and start of September, we did a lot of trips in a 2 or 3 month window when there's no snow. And even then, we're still running into snow in some of the spots. It just is all year round. So but yeah, BC is just absolutely littered with awesome places to go and check out, and you just can't find any information on a lot of them. There's huge mountains. We found a volcano we want to get to next year that was just too late in the season to try going to it. But BC is a very, very large province as well. And we've only explored, the bottom quarter of it. And to get up any higher, you're long road trips, you're talking 10, 12, 20 hours plus to get to the northern side of the province. So, but yeah, no, BC is a beautiful place to explore, but you got to be careful where you get to, because it's not hard to get 5-6 hours away from anybody else. And if you get stuck, you're on your own getting out. So we're always make sure we're very well prepared. We're bringing chainsaws, shovels, recovery gear, snatch blocks, everything. And, everybody that goes out when I go out is very well experienced in using all of their gear. We're generally, when we're going out, especially on longer trips, we're not really, if you're new to wheeling, it's probably not a trip for you. Everybody needs to be self-sufficient, familiar with your rig, familiar with basic repairs, and how to use your gear, because it's, there's a lot goes on behind the scenes that, you typically don't see in the videos, and that, what can be like a 15-second segment is maybe 3 or 4 hours sometimes of pulling winch line and traction boards and everything else. We definitely, don't get into any crazy dangerous situations. I think everything is within everybody's realm of comfort. But that said, when you spend a lot of time on the trails and going through kind of sketchy stuff like that, your level of comfort tends to shift. And so when I bring somebody along with me, they're usually grabbing onto the handles and concerned about a lot of stuff. But yeah, there's bridges, washouts, landslides, everything out there. And it looks good on camera. It looks good in the videos. So we try to make it entertaining. But, we're never really in any danger. But if you're familiar with your rig, you know how or where the limitations are.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so now just to the last question. We'll start again with you, Todd. Do you have any tips or advice or future plans that you want to share down the road or down the trail, if I may say?
Well, I'll start with the future plans. So next year, pretty well every month we plan a nice run where we do an overlanding trip. But next year we're doing a trip around the Atlantic provinces. So we're not 100% sure on the time frame yet, and when it gets closer to the date, we'll actually announce it when we're doing it, and we'll take a couple of people along with us, and that'll be a pretty fun adventure. It'll be anywhere from 7 to maybe 10 or 14 days. Now, 2 years down the road, I'm actually planning on getting another vehicle. I'm moving over to a Gladiator, and it's just I find a much better build for overlanding. So the JK I have now will be kind of converted to a little bit more extreme off-roading, and then the Gladiator will be converted over to an overlanding rig. But with that rig, I'll be going across Canada, and I'm hoping to get a couple of rigs to either join me for the entire trip or join me along the way. And it's kind of funny that you're on the channel, Casey, because I was actually going to reach out to you and Sean next year to see if I could.
Yeah, well, definitely watch your dates, because there's not a lot of stuff we can get into past mid-September or before June.
So my plan was actually to be in probably the end of July, beginning of August for BC.
Yeah.
So start heading out somewhere in June, and then make it to BC by middle of July, end of July, and then come back down through the US and back to Nova Scotia. But it was funny when Dino had told me he reached out to you, because I was thinking, damn, I was going to reach out to Casey myself.
Yeah, definitely reach out when you start putting some plans down. I'm not sure what next summer looks like yet, but
It'll be 2 summers. This will be 2 summers.
2 summers, yeah. Well, that's even further out.
Yeah, so I wasn't reaching out to you until we were more.
Yeah, you bet.
The plans were confirmed, but
so Todd, if any of our viewers find like your plans with your group, is it overlanding Cape Breton?
It's overlanding Cape Breton, and it's only a small group of people right now, but the thing is, it's guys that always go out. So whenever we post an event, majority of people in the group will be there, and usually we'll get like 7 to 10 rigs on all of our overlanding trips, whether it's the summer or winter, which is nice. We camp regardless of what the temperature or what the weather is. Well, I shouldn't say that. We don't like camping in rain. I mean, if we know it's going to downpour with torrential rain, we will reschedule, because it's no fun sitting in your rig or during a rainstorm and not being able to sit around a fire and have a good time with people.
Okay, so I'll let the viewers know that the link to the Facebook group and your YouTube channel will be in the description section. So if they find anything that you're talking about interesting, they could investigate it further themselves.
Yep.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, Dieter, do you have any final tips, words of advice, or would you like to share some future plans?
This year we were out in Whistler. We did one trip, actually with our son. He has a Ram 1500. We went up to China Head Mountain. Anyway, on the way down, we came to two guys on motorbikes. One of them was on the ground, broken arm, and needed desperate help. They had the Garmin InReach with them. And on that topic, did you know that it takes at least 2 hours until they respond? My son has a very high level of first aid, so he actually could help him. And we evacuated the person to a safe place. It took about 6 hours until he was met by an ambulance on paved roads, because they don't come to unpaved roads and they don't come to GPS coordinates. So what we learned out of there is we need a outdoor first aid knowledge, which we will do this winter.
Your tip is, if you're with a group, look into getting some outdoor first aid training.
You know, it's a really great point. And, you know, I use a Spot satellite communicator as well, but I would never depend on it for emergencies, right? It would be, you know, it's good to, you know, if you need to send the SOS, fine. But, you know, I think as far as a group goes, it's always about how can you get out? And a lot of the time, you know, what are they going to do? Like the only way to get to where we are is a helicopter. So I have first responder first aid training, but, you know, I think it's something that if people are going out frequently together, you know, at least have some basic first aid, you know, even just light stuff like occupational first aid training that you can have for at work and stuff like that gives you some basics. But yeah, you need to be prepared, have first aid. Like we all have first aid kits in our vehicles, and understand some basic, like how to manage some basic situations, you know, and when it's okay to move someone and when it's not okay to move someone, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a really bad situation, you know, you don't want to move someone and you don't want to bring them out of the bush. And that's where you really need to manage the situation until, you know, like search and rescue, you know, is generally who's going to come out and get you and provide help when you're in a really remote location. And, you know, sometimes it's via helicopter, sometimes it's via quad or side by side. But yeah, you could be 7, 8, 12 hours, right? Like you need to be able to handle situations until then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dieter, thank you very much. That's an excellent tip. And now we'll move on to Casey. Do you have any tips, advice, or would you like to share any future plans that you have for your channel?
Yeah, well, I guess a little on both topics. Actually, in Saturday's video, I kind of opened it up with just some words about the flooding and the challenges that BC's had. And you know, I think some of the most important things to anybody going out is, you know, share where you're going, make sure you have an itinerary and sort of a return time so that if you don't return, at least somebody can start asking questions. Carrying communications systems, you know, there's so much available to us now, whether it's VHF radios and understanding how to use them and use repeaters and things like that, to satellite communicators. Even if you're not reaching out for SOS, you can still text message other people that may know your itinerary and you can provide them updates and things like that. And always just be extra prepared, you know, like never go out for the day and have no food or the ability to spend the night in case something happens. So, you know, it's always sort of like the trip plus 1 day type planning, extra food, emergency blankets. You know, my Jeep is always ready to go for multi-day adventures, but you know, not everybody is, right? You hop in a stock Jeep and want to go exploring, and then next thing you know, you've got a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere and no ability to communicate. And you know, it's really hard to use your jack on not solid surfaces, and it's hard to change your tire, and now you're stranded. So you know, it doesn't take much. So you know, I think the age old be prepared, but you know, be prepared to spend the night is probably my best advice when you're going out, and share what you're doing so that others can go out and look for you if something happens. I know the communities out here, you know, we've got a Facebook group for like not search and rescue, but just rescuing people. You know, if somebody's missing for too long, you know, maybe just going out and looking for them. Something happened with their vehicle and it's not an emergency, but they're stuck. So, you know, I'd say that kind of information is some of the best information to give to people. As far as plans go, immediately I'm trying to get south of the border, trying to get out of the cold weather. And I know the guys were just down, the guys from Epic and Sean from Storytel now were just down in the States. I wasn't able to join them, but we've been chomping at the bit to get down and see some sights in the US because it's been so long, and I've got a lot of people I want to go meet up with down there. So that's what's for me. And as far as vehicle builds go, we've got a few more add-ons coming to the JL. There's a big lighting project in the works, which I'll be announcing here shortly. And you know, on the topic of gladiators, you know, that's something that's been rolling around my mind a lot as well. I think the gladiators provide a very versatile overland platform, and anybody who questions what you can get through with a gladiator, just go watch the story till now, and you'll see where you can take one. So we've never really encountered anything that Sean couldn't get through that I could. I think probably if you're driving overland, even just what I would call extreme overlanding is sort of what we do. There's not a big difference between Wrangler and Gladiator, but my JK could definitely get into stuff you couldn't with an overland rig. And I wouldn't say that the Gladiator really sets that apart, but more so the overall height and weight and things like that would be more the differential. So you know, that would be my 2 cents. But I would, you know, I wouldn't say I would get a Gladiator. I'd say I've heavily considered it. I'm waiting to see if they put a V8 in a Gladiator, and that might be my next build.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Casey. Okay, I'm just going to open the floor, make it an open forum. Maybe you heard something that somebody said during these questions that you want to get some further clarification. So I'll just open it up. Does anybody have any questions for each other or something else they want to add? Dieter?
Yes. I made one big mistake, I believe. When we bought the Jeep, it was a used one. We added 2 20-liter gas cans, and we have them on the roof rack. We should have put a backup gas can under the Jeep. So expand the volume of gas you can carry without logging these cans. Does anybody here, like Casey or Todd, do you have these expanded cans, and is it really that simple and worthwhile?
Yeah, I know Sean just put a secondary tank on his Gladiator a couple of months ago, and it's basically just you reroute the exhaust a little bit, and he's got I don't know how many liters. It's almost double what his fuel capacity is.
Wow.
And yeah, it just has a splitter valve, so when you fill up, it fills both of them up, and it's a transfer tank. So when you start getting low, it takes about 20 minutes, but you just hit a switch and it transfers the fuel into the primary fuel tank. And he really likes it. It's great. And yeah, you get a way more range. And very, very often for us, we're, you know, always thinking about fuel. I generally carry an extra 20 liters of diesel with me in the back, but I carry it on board because I haven't found a really good solution for carrying fuel outside of the vehicle that isn't insanely expensive per liter of fuel that you bring. The Rotopaxes are just so expensive, and they don't carry a lot of capacity. And so you're, you know, for 20 liters, you're talking about adding multiples of them. So, but yeah, the transfer tank is a really good option. I know, like for JK's Epic Family Road Trip, when we met up with them last year, they have their JK has a transfer tank in it as well. And that's where I think Sean got the idea for it. And they love it. It's great. I'm not too bad with the diesel. The range on it is substantially more than the gas Jeeps. So it seems like I'm not running out of fuel as quickly. And I know Sean's got a supercharger coming for his truck, so he's going to really need that extra tank here soon.
Yeah.
Great question, Dieter.
Yeah, so I was actually pretty impressed with that tank that they put in his Glide. It was it's just amazing how it fit up there, and it just works amazing.
Yeah, I think he's a few liters short now on it because he's hit it a few times, but but yeah, no, it seems to be working out really well for him.
Okay.
So like my Jeep or our Jeep is old, so I still may think about it and put one in. I hate my gas cans. They're just awkward and on top of the Jeep. So
yeah, it's annoying having fuel cans, and I, you know, like I wouldn't want to have the fuel on top of the Jeep, you know, doing some of the stuff we have, because, you know, you're adding a few 100 pounds potentially at the worst possible place up high, but as well getting them on and off would be challenging as well, for sure.
I gotta say, Sean's build is I love that build on that Gladiator.
Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy for sure.
But, he was the person that sold me on it. I watched his videos quite a bit. I watched your videos quite a bit, and I saw what you guys went through and what you did, and it just fits my needs, what I want to be able to do. The JK and the JL just have an extra like 30 inches in length to be able to store more equipment, and you can do so much more with the bed. That's my biggest thing with I find with the JK is you take so much equipment in it, and organizing it in a way that makes it easy to get at when you're overlanding is sometimes a challenge in its own, especially if you're doing a 3 or 4 day trip. You find the first day is really organized and the second day a little less organized, and by the end of it, everything's a mess.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time and thinking organizing my JL. It's getting pretty good, and I don't know, I'm really kind of on the fence on which is better. Honestly, there's some big drawbacks with the Gladiator that the Wrangler doesn't face, and I think, you know, if money's no object, the Gladiator is probably better. But when you have to start adding things like a smart cap or some sort of thing to keep dirt and mud and dust out of all your cargo, you know, you talk to all the guys with the Gladiators, and the biggest frustration they have is all of their gear is always dirty. So, you know, Sean ended up adding the smart cap to his, Paul added a smart cap to his Gladiator, and I'm not sure what the Ginger's doing with his Gladiator, but you know, it's just the dirt is super frustrating on all your cargo. So you're looking at, you know, another $5,000 for a canopy if you want to keep your gear clean, and you don't have that problem with the Wrangler. So, you know, the cargo is more, but at the same time, you've got some other drawbacks and challenges. Yeah, for sure. But
I think with any build, that's what happens is you end up with trade-offs, and you just got to kind of work with it and find out which one is the right fit. Now that's still almost 2 years down the road for me, so my mind might change again.
Yeah, what draws me to the Gladiator, I think the most, is that the challenge I have with the Wrangler right now is the height, and I take a ferry every time I leave the island. So when I'm over 7 feet, I have to go on the truck deck, and I can't use shared loading passes. So I'm always trying to fight the ferry lines. And if I do a Gladiator build, I want to do just a half rack with a rooftop tent below the 7 foot line. So it's probably the biggest change and attractor to a Gladiator for me. Other than that, honestly, I prefer the Wrangler platform, I think, in general. I just the way it's laid out and having all my stuff in the vehicle itself. But there's no way to do a rooftop tent and stay under 7 feet. Maybe with one of the Ursa Minor campers on there, but it's a pretty big chunk of change. Yeah.
Actually, I was going to ask you that with your experience with the overlanding that you've done, what do you think is the best camper to get?
Camper or rooftop tent?
Rooftop tent.
You know, it's a hard question to answer, honestly, because the rooftop tent space has exploded with different companies coming out with rooftop tents. And, you know, they all have little nuances, I think, that are pros and cons. Right now, I've got the Free Spirit Evolution, which I like because it goes straight up and you can kind of see out all 4 sides. But it's kind of not fitting really well with now having an awning on there. And so I'm not sure what I'll do for the upcoming future. But, you know, I think like Free Spirit makes a really good rooftop tent. I'm a little biased, obviously. You know, I think other companies like James Brood make really good rooftop tents. Sean's got the iCamper. They just came out with a bunch of new rooftop tents at SEMA that you can check out. He's been really happy with that one. Roof Nest makes some there's a lot of companies, honestly, that just make the rooftop tents that are really nice. I think you got to kind of look at how many people are going to be sleeping in it. How fast do you want it to set up? What other accessories are you bolting onto it? How tall of a rooftop tent can you tolerate when it's closed? So some of them are pretty low profile, some of them aren't. I'm kind of being drawn to the wedge style ones, possibly next. One that maybe overhangs off the back to give some rain protection when I'm standing at the back of the vehicle at camp and things like that. And losing one of the 3 windows or one of the 4 windows on the front side by having a wedge style. But to me, it's about what is fastest to open and close and what can I store gear in. It's nice to be able to keep your sleeping gear in it, frees up room in your vehicle, and it cuts down on your setup and tear down times. So that's really important. And just how they open and close, especially in cold, wet weather, because if the latch systems and climbing up and down the Jeep multiple times to get it closed are what it takes, and it's pouring rain and you're trying to break camp and it's 0 degrees out, that can be really frustrating. And, I think the one challenge I have with the Evolution right now is that I'm up and down the vehicle, 8 times trying to get each corner closed and all of the material put inside it and everything latched down. So it's kind of it's quick, but it's a lot of work. And it's, we're not always in the best of weather and we're trying to get out of there. So I wouldn't say there's one best rooftop tent, but I think you got to think about what's important to you. And, I think like if I were to, say a Gladiator, I've been considering single person rooftop tents. So there's several companies now that have just single half width rooftop tents, which are obviously half the weight. So you're saving weight. And if you want to remove the tent, it's easy to get on and off. And it leaves you some roof space to put cargo boxes so you can carry extra stuff if you need to. There's something to consider. If you're always by yourself, do you really need, 48 or 55-inch wide rooftop tent on your vehicle?
I sleep in a one-person swag most of the time.
There you go, right? So, maybe, iCamper just came out with a single person rooftop tent, and there's a couple other companies that I've seen that have them as well. And that's something to me that's really been interesting.
I have a question regarding the rooftop tents. The sides are usually some fabric or something. Like realistically, if you would go for 1 week with a rooftop tent, and let's say it rains more or less the whole time, so that it's always wet, how long would you be able to maintain a sort of dry environment up there so you can sleep? Would you be able to do it for the whole week, or is it like a 2-day thing? Or
yeah, I think it's really going to depend on which rooftop tent you have. So if that's something that's important, I would be really researching the different materials. Free Spirit uses a tri-layer, really thick material that's both waterproof, dark, and insulating, which is really nice. So yeah, we're always packing up our rooftop tents and they're wet. And so you make sure all the windows are closed and
but you still hold them to the inside, so you have all the condensation and everything.
Yeah, well, exactly. So it's super important to get your inside of the tent dry if you have any condensation. I try to sleep with windows open in my tent, but it does get a lot of condensation because of its ability to keep heat in. There are tents like Roof Nest, which I've been looking at. They have a condensation mat underneath of the mattress, which just inherently absorbs the moisture that's in the tent, even though it's underneath the mattress, which cuts down on condensation. But yeah, in the morning, if there's condensation, I will try to dry it, wipe it off with a towel, open my windows right up. The Evolution that I have has a big overhang on one side, so you can open up the windows and let a lot of air come in, even if it's pouring rain, and get that condensation out. And the last thing I'll do is close up my tent before we break camp, so it gets as much time to dry the inside out. But I've never had a problem with moisture permeating through the actual walls. Even if I pack it up soaking wet, I'll come home and it may be 3 or 4 days before I can dry it out because it's been raining. And every time I open it up, the inside is never wet or damp. It's always just the outside still has water on it.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody. And I just can't believe all the information that we were able to share. I think there was something in our discussion for people with stock Jeeps, all the way up to people who have some major builds. And we've learned a little bit about some adventures in different parts of the country. So that was awesome. Thank you all very much. I really appreciated your participation in this collaboration. And to our viewers, if there was anything that was of interest that you want to pursue further, please look in the description section of the video for the contact information for our participants, and you could check out their videos and see what else that they're sharing there. Thank you all, and to our viewers, thank you for joining us. I'm Dino for Cheaper Jeeper TV. Until next week, be well, stay safe, take care.